Hi everyone, and welcome to week 2 of Crossroads Children's Mental Health Center's 3-part webinar series focused on children's mental health and COVID-19. My name is Julie Giacchino. I'm a registered psychotherapist and manager at Crossroads. Myself and my coworker Isabel McNider, registered social worker and supervisor at Crossroads, will walk you through today's webinar. In times of stress and uncertainty, it's normal for people that are otherwise healthy to experience impacts on their mental health and their well-being. At Crossroads, we strongly believe that addressing mental health needs to be a central part of the response to this pandemic. The pandemic is slow-moving, and currently it's not clear when it will end, making it even more challenging for families. Mental health must be part of the conversation now more than ever. Here's a little bit of information about us before we start. Crossroads Children's Mental Health Center works exclusively with children under the age of 12 and their loved ones. We're committed to developing and delivering a wide range of mental health services to help children and families struggling with severe emotional, behavioral, and social challenges. Our services are individualized, families are included as full participants, and there is no charge to access our programs. Here's a list of some of the services that we offer, but the one I want to highlight right now is our walk-in clinic. We offer a free weekly walk-in clinic on Wednesdays and Thursdays to families that have children under the age of 12. All of the information on our programs and how to access our walk-in can be found on our website at www.crossroadschildren.ca. And I'll also provide more information on how you can reach us at the end of today's presentation. As we head back to school, we find ourselves in uncharted territory. There's a lot of pressure right now on families, and it can feel like every day new information or new guidance is being provided. So much unknown is certainly anxiety producing for everyone. Experts and service providers are already starting to see increasing demand for mental health services as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. In response to the anticipated surge of mental health needs of children and families, and in preparation for Back to School 2020, Crossroads Children's Mental Health Center has created this 3-part webinar series. Today, our focus will be on understanding the stress response system and understanding how to calm a stressed child. Through this brief webinar series, we hope to provide you with some key concepts that will help you and your family navigate these uncertain times. But most of all, our goal is to provide you with some practical strategies to help your children thrive. Understanding the stress response system and how to calm a stressed child. Here's an overview of today's webinar. We're going to start with a calming activity to get us all ready to learn. Then we'll talk about the brain and the window of tolerance. Following that, we're going to focus on fight, flight, freeze, and collapse. And lastly, we're going to discuss some strategies for home. As we move through today's webinar, much like in our first webinar of this series, we hope you'll come to see how important it is for you as the caregiver to feel well and calm in order to support your child to thrive, especially during these uncertain times. Your sensitivity and your patience are critical, so taking care of yourself is important, more important now than ever. Our capacity as parents to support our children is limited by our own physical and mental well-being. One way to support our own well-being as parents is through mindfulness. Before you roll your eyes or shut the computer screen, I promise this will be quick, painless, and we think very helpful. So with that in mind, let's start off with a 3-minute mindfulness activity that would be great to do with your child. This comes from the Go Noodle series that can be found on YouTube for free. This activity will help you to focus on the present and sets the stage for your learning today. Taking the time to calm a racing mind helps to set you up for success as a learner in this situation and as a caregiver at home. Simply follow the prompts on the screen.
This exercise will teach you how to gain control of your stressful energy when it gets too high to handle. Close your eyes, listen, and follow along. Or keep your eyes open and follow along that way. It's up to you. Sit tall. You can be on the ground with your legs crossed, or in your chair with your feet flat on the floor. Now imagine that you can look up and see the sky. And up in the sky, way up in the sky, is a balloon. If you'd like, you can choose a color for your balloon. Keep the picture of the balloon in your mind. The balloon's string reaches all the way down to your hands. Hold on to the string. Imagine that you can feel the pull of that big balloon. Imagine that the wind pushes it from side to side. Or imagine that the wind actually tries to pull the balloon higher into the sky. Maybe you can feel the gentle tugging of the string in your hands. Now try to bring your balloon down. Be careful to go slowly. You don't want the fragile string to break from pulling too hard or too quickly. Take your time. Imagine that you can gently pull the string, hand over hand. The string collects in a pile at your feet. Hand over hand, pull after gentle pull, the balloon appears to come closer. It might even become easier to bring it down in your mind as it gets closer to you. Keep bringing it down, closer and closer. Some other strings might be longer or shorter than yours, and that's okay. Just bring it down at your speed. Focus on your balloon. Keep bringing it down. Your colorful balloon may now be within your reach. Pretend that you do not need to use the string anymore. You can actually hold the balloon between your hands. Notice if you can feel the balloon in your hands. Be gentle. Imagine that with your next out-breath, you can open your hands and release your balloon. Let it go. Notice in your mind where it goes. It could be different for everyone. Just remain still for a few more moments and watch your balloon drift away.
Relax, think positive, and click here for more mindfulness exercises on GoNoodle.com.
So now we're ready to dive right into the content of today's webinar. So let's start by talking about the brain. The brain is very complex, but there are a few basics that are really important to understand when it comes to stress. Our brain has multiple parts, many multiple parts, but for the purposes of this explanation, we've separated the brain into three main areas. The first one is the brainstem, and that area is highlighted in yellow on this slide. And that area of the brain is responsible for things like temperature, heart rate, blood pressure, and appetite. And all of the sensory input that comes to us from the outside world also first enters at the level of the brainstem. The limbic region, which is colored in green on the slide, is where our emotions live. That area is responsible for attachment and emotional development. And finally, we have the cortex. The cortex is in blue on the slide, and essentially that's the smart part of our brain. That part of the brain is responsible for things like learning, planning, problem solving, and reflecting. So the brain is simpler in those lower areas and gets more complex as we get to the top of the brain. So why is it so important to know these three parts of the brain? Well, when we're really stressed or really anxious, which some parents and some children might be right now given the pandemic, we lose access to the cortex, to that smart part of our brain. It literally gets disconnected from the rest of the brain. And so the limbic region, which is where our emotions live, is left in charge. And that results in intense emotions, impulsive reactions, rigid responses, and often a lack of consideration for others' points of view. This is true of children, and it's also true for us as adults. When our emotional brain is in charge, we might act on information before we've really had a chance to think about it, and that's when we get in trouble. How many of us have been in a situation where we might say or do something in the heat of the moment, and then once we've had a chance to calm down and we have access to the smart part of our brain again, we regret what we may have said or what we may have done. When a child escalates, or even when they're in the middle of a meltdown, we often hear adults telling them, think of the consequences of what you're doing, or think of the calming strategies that you've been working on. But if the emotional response for the child is strong enough, they can't think. The cortex is shut down, and their emotions are running the show. Kids are rarely able to think themselves calm. So what we need to do is go from the bottom up. We need to regulate them at the level of the brainstem first, and only then will they be able to access the smart part of their brain so that they're able to think and to learn. And in the next few slides, we'll talk about how we go about regulating children at the brainstem level. When a child is calm and feels regulated, they're able to learn, love, and play to the best of their ability. They are in what we call their window of tolerance. When a child is in their window of tolerance, that's where they can benefit the most from everything that school has to offer. But when something stresses or triggers a child, for example, the transition back to school during this pandemic, making them feel worried or scared, some children will be pushed outside of their window of tolerance. Some will be pushed just outside of their window of tolerance, while others will be pushed way outside of their window, leading to either mild or extreme distress. Every child, every student has a unique window of tolerance. For example, a child who's experienced trauma and loss has a narrower window of tolerance compared to a child who may have had a secure, stable, and safe early childhood. In other words, small everyday triggers, everyday stressors can be intolerable and unbearable for children that have a history of trauma. We anticipate that for some, the experience of the pandemic may have narrowed the window of tolerance. When a child is stressed, they can swing into hyperarousal and go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. Their body changes, their heart rate increases, and they get shaky. On the outside, if they are in fight, you might see a child kicking or hitting, saying no, or blaming others and being unable to hear others' points of view. If a child is in flight, you might see a child running away or hiding, or you might see a child that can't sit still or can't relax. If you have a child that's in freeze, what you might see is someone spacing out or not being able to start or complete some basic chores or basic tasks around the house. Or the child might complain about physical symptoms of their distress, like having a tummy ache or a headache or some dizziness. So that's what we would see on the outside. But on the inside, they likely feel unsafe, frightened, or confused. When this occurs, when the child's stress response is activated, the focus needs to be on supporting the child to regulate, to calm, and to connect back with their body. And they'll need our help to get back into their window of tolerance. Before we move on to the next slide to see what we can do to help the child that's in fight, flight, freeze, take a moment to think about what fight, flight, or freeze looks like for you. The first and most important step for dealing with these behaviors is to recognize that they don't mean that the child lacks self-control or is trying to be disobedient. We need to see these behaviors as signs that the stress levels on the child are too high and need to be reduced. So if you think your child's stress response system might be activated and you see them in a fight mode, some things that might help calm the child are activities like deep breathing, getting the child moving through some swinging or climbing, giving the child an important task to do, really chewy foods, some hot chocolate, a warm bath. If you think your child is in a flight mode, then keeping the child close by is really important. Things like a weighted blanket or a soft toy can be regulating. Giving the child an easy, familiar task can be helpful. And providing the child with some crunchy foods like carrots can also help to calm that child's stress response system. If you have a child that's in more of a freeze mode, being present with the child is really important. Activities like digging in the mud or playing in the sand can be helpful. Having the child climb, jump on a trampoline, or hang off of a bar, watching TV, and food items like a hot chocolate and a toast can also help the child calm their stress response system. A stressed child can also swing into hypoarousal, which means they go into a collapse mode. On the outside, they might appear as though they're not listening or daydreaming. They may seem slowed down or sleepy. They may be unable to get out of bed in the morning, and they might be unable to play and relate to others. When this occurs, when the child's stress response system is activated, again, the focus needs to be on supporting the child to regulate, calm, and connect back to their body. And they'll need our help to get back into their window of tolerance. If you think your child is in collapse, some activities that might be helpful are playing with Lego or Play-Doh, providing a weighted blanket or a toy, giving the child some simple, repetitive things to do, simply being quiet and present, or swinging on a swing set. It's also important to note that children can swing between hyperarousal and hypoarousal. This video is intended to help school-age children gain an understanding of the way their brain works, to recognize and to manage their emotions. It summarizes a lot of the concepts that we've been talking about, but in a more child-friendly way. And it also uses the hand model of the brain by Dr. Siegel to provide kids with a very useful visual of the brain and what happens when their stress response is activated.
Kids want to know. Imagine that you really want to play soccer at lunchtime, but when the bell rings, you can't find your shoes. When you finally get out to the field, the teams have been picked and it's too late for you to play. Maybe you got so mad that this small problem became a big problem in an instant. When we lose control of our emotions like this, we can call it flipping your lid, kind of like the way a pot might do if it was too full and too hot. A little while later, after you've cooled down, you might even feel sad when you realize that when you had a big reaction to a little problem, you could have hurt someone's feelings. What if I told you that this happens to everyone? Your parents, friends, teachers, and everyone else you know can flip their lid and lose control of their emotions sometimes. We all need to work on managing our feelings. Have you ever wondered why we can have such a hard time keeping our emotions under control? It can be really tough being a kid these days. There's just so much going on every day, at home, at school, even after school. Sometimes it's hard to keep a lid on things, and we act in ways that are not kind or caring, even though we don't mean to be hurtful. There are so many situations that we encounter every day that can cause our emotions to bubble up. Maybe you felt upset or frustrated when you were working on a problem or activity at school and just can't seem to get it right. Maybe something unexpected or embarrassing happened to you in front of your friends. Maybe you had something important to say but didn't get a chance to say it. These and many, many more situations can cause both kids and adults to flip their lids. So why does this even happen? Well, it has to do with the way our amazing human brains work to help keep us safe. This is your brain, the part of your body that controls everything you do. Let's take a closer look at the parts of the brain and how they can work together to help us keep a lid on things. The brain is a pretty complicated organ, so we're going to use our hand to help us visualize what's happening up there. Let's imagine that our brain has an upstairs and a downstairs. Here, where our thumb is called the midbrain. This is where our emotions and memories are created and stored. Below that is your brainstem. The brainstem controls the things our bodies do that we don't have to think about, like breathing. It also controls our automatic reactions to certain situations. For example, if you touch a cup with hot tea in it and it's too hot, your downstairs brain feels the pain and will pull your hand away to stop you from getting burnt. It's an automatic reaction. You don't have to stop and think about what to do. Or imagine you're out on a hike and a bear wanders onto the path. Your brain doesn't stop and think, what kind of bear is it? Is it friendly? Your downstairs brain notices that you feel scared. It takes charge and in a split second decides whether or not you should fight, fly, another word for run away, or freeze. Because of the way our downstairs brain reacts to these situations, we can think of it as our emotional brain because it reacts instantly without needing to think things through. It's always ready to take charge in any situation to help keep you safe. So if this is our downstairs brain, then this part where the back of our hand and fingers are can be seen as our upstairs brain. It's called the cerebral cortex. This part of our brain helps us think logically, act with kindness, and think about how others might be feeling. It's also the problem-solving part of our brain. It helps us to think of possible solutions to a problem and decide which one is best. The upstairs brain is our thinking brain. Your upstairs and downstairs brain don't work alone. Your brain is set up so that the upstairs and downstairs brain can communicate with itself. It sends messages from section to section all the time about what our bodies feel and need. Let's take a closer look at our brain fist. Where our fingertips are is the logic and reasoning part of the brain that springs into action when we have a problem to solve, and usually it does a great job of doing it. But sometimes it can have a hard time solving a problem if the emotional brain and thinking brain can't communicate well enough. This can happen if your emotions get too overwhelming and your downstairs brain decides that this situation might be dangerous, even if it isn't really. And we all know what happens when our downstairs brain thinks you're in danger. It triggers our fight, flight, or freeze reflex. Our emotions start to bubble up and then suddenly everything boils over. We flip our lids. This can look like a scary, angry reaction, or it might be crying or running away from a problem. Now that we've flipped our lids, see how far away our fingertips are from the midbrain? When our lids are flipped, our upstairs and downstairs brain can't talk to each other. Our emotions have become too strong and we can't think clearly and can't solve the problem in a peaceful way. So what can we do to stop us from flipping our lid? Well, it all starts with realizing that we're about to flip our lid and then turning down the heat so it doesn't happen. Remember that soccer game we talked about at the beginning of the video and you were really upset and didn't get to play? Maybe you felt your tummy rumble or you felt your face getting hot? Did your heart start to pound and did you feel your hands start to clench? Were you frustrated, disappointed, and angry? These types of strong feelings are all indicators that you might be close to flipping your lid. If you feel this start to happen, it's a good idea to walk away, take some deep breaths, and look for an adult to talk to before you flip your lid. It might be a parent, grandparent, coach, teacher, or another trusted adult nearby. They can help you with strategies to solve the problem once you've calmed down enough for your upstairs brain to be ready to do some peaceful problem solving. If you do flip your lid, those same trusted adults can offer you some time and space to cool down before you start to problem solve together. Once your upstairs brain is back in charge, you can share your story and get some help. Using I statements can help you to tell an adult what you need. I need a hug. I need you to listen to what I have to say. I need another chance. I need some alone time. I need a walk. I need you to see that I can do well. Learning more about the brain and how it works can really help us to understand our emotions and to be peaceful problem solvers. When we listen to our bodies and our brains, we can turn the challenges of being a kid into opportunities to learn and grow. Thanks for watching! If you're interested in learning more about the brain and how to manage emotions, some resources are linked in the description box below.
Everyone's being exposed to this confusing, stressful, and sometimes frightening situation that is the COVID-19 pandemic. But are we and our children being traumatized by this pandemic? It's not the nature of the event itself that makes something traumatic. It's really the subjective experience that defines whether an event is traumatic or not. So trauma can be understood more as a failure of recovery. It's a response to an event. It's not the event itself. And that response can take some time to manifest itself, meaning that some children may seem like they're doing just fine, but over time this might change. Some children will show signs of traumatic stress in response to the pandemic, while others won't. There will not be a one-size-fits-all response to the pandemic. If a child's caregivers are relatively calm and responsive and reassuring, this is definitely a protective factor. If, on the other hand, caregivers are overwhelmed with their own stress or panic, it can be hard to provide the reassurance that children need. The way that a child reacts is strongly influenced by how others around them are reacting. Our next section will provide you with some proactive strategies, things that you can do at home to set your child up for success and keep them in their window of tolerance. But if you're concerned that your child might have been more significantly impacted by the pandemic and might require more, our third and final webinar in this series will help. And today I'll also provide you with some additional information at the end of the presentation on where you can access further supports.
Hi everyone, I'm Isabel McNider, Supervisor at Crossroads, and I'll be covering the next slides. When stress impacts our children and they are pushed outside of the window of tolerance, we can often see an escalating in challenging behaviors. Although you can't undo the painful experiences your child has gone through or is going through, you can absolutely make a difference. Here are some strategies that can help foster a positive home environment and ease the impact of stress. You'll see that there is some repetition from last week, but as we mentioned, repetition and reassurance is one of the best ways to implement new strategies. If you've missed the first webinar, some of the strategies discussed here, such as routines and schedules, are reviewed in detail in webinar 1. I highly encourage you to watch the first webinar if you've missed it. So firstly, find time to connect daily. This is likely the most important strategy. If you can only do one thing, take time to invest in connecting with your child. Your time and attention are the most powerful rewards. Finding time to be present and patient with your child will pay off. What this can look like can be incorporating closeness and physical touch to your day, snuggling on the couch while watching a movie, playing together with a family pet, cooking together. You may have heard you have to reach the heart before you can reach the head, or connect before you direct. Essentially, when you tune into your child, it gives them the messaging that they matter, that they're important, and that they are loved. Take the time to fill that relationship piggy bank. Kids are much more likely to follow through on what you have asked if you've taken the time to invest in the relationship. Provide predictable structures and routine. Children thrive on consistency. Establishing a daily routine can provide a sense of order during this otherwise stressful time, with the caveat that you can give yourself permission to be flexible if taking breaks from the routine or temporarily altering your routine is what is needed in the moment. There is no perfect one-size-fits-all daily routine. Find what works for your family during this unique time in all of our lives. Limit the number of transitions in a day when possible. This links back to consistency and predictability. The more the day is consistent and predictable, the less vigilant the brain needs to be, and the less vigilant it is, the less likely there will be meltdowns. Transitions are experienced as stressors. If a child experiences too many transitions close together, they may lose their capacity to cope. Too much change, too fast equals meltdown. For example, in the morning, you can provide your child with a preview of the day and give your child a heads up before any transitions. For children, a visual schedule of the day is helpful, and for other kids, a countdown app can help. For many kids, incorporating movements or fun into the transition can help ease the stress. For instance, a kangaroo hop to the bath or singing a song on the way to the car. Limit news media input for young children. The current 24/7 media coverage is overwhelming for us as adults, let alone for our children. Remember, children often overhear or see what you're watching on TV and are listening to the radio. Set clear and developmentally realistic expectations and ensure all the adults in the home are on the same page. Remember, not all children are at the same level when it comes to their skill development. So resist the urge to compare with the cousins or the neighbor's child or even the sibling. Some expectations will need to be individualized or adjusted for your child, in some cases dropped completely, at least temporarily. Look for ways to prevent difficult situations rather than punishing your child after these situations happen. If you know that your child becomes very difficult in certain situations or during certain activities, try to think about what you can do to avoid these ahead of time. Wherever possible, include your child in that proactive planning. Provide some opportunities for your child to experience moments of choice and control, which might be particularly limited right now. Even simple choices around what to have for dinner, which game to play, which movie to watch, or the order of chores to accomplish might make a difference towards helping your child feel like they can retain some sense of control in their daily lives. Being careful not to give them choice overload, as that can also be overwhelming. Support your child to identify and express their feelings so they are heard. Learning how to identify and cope with emotion needs to be supported and encouraged. If feelings are minimized or dismissed, they will often be expressed in unhealthy ways. It's important for children to understand that all feelings are okay to feel. It's okay and normal to feel nervous about going back to school, for example. And there are healthy ways to act when sad, glad, mad, etc. As children get a little older, we can help them to start to consider how other people may feel and how others show their feelings. Some ways to practice that is to read a book together. There is something magical about books that make them ideal in helping children learn about and talk about feelings. You can discuss the characters and events in the story. What do you think he should do? How do you think she feels? What would you do if you were this character? Use play. Young children often use play or drawing to express their fears and wishes. This is a healthy and adaptive way for a child to make sense of what is happening around them. You can anticipate COVID-19 themed play and artwork. When it comes to play, one of the most important things you can do with your child is just stop, sit, listen, and play. When you're quiet and interactive with children, you find that they are beginning to show you and tell you what's really going on inside them. Yet as simple as this sounds, it is one of the most difficult things for adults to do. Stop, quit worrying about the time or your next task, and really relax into the moment with a child. This simple act can bring about amazing results. Notice nonverbals. Tune into the cues that your kids are giving you. Because they don't yet have the vocabulary, some children instead communicate their feelings in other ways. Children can express their feelings through facial expressions, through their body, their behavior, and their play. Be a role model. Children learn about feelings and how to express them appropriately by watching others. Show your child how you're feeling about different situations and how you deal with those feelings. Listen, stay present, and resist the urge to make your child's difficult feelings go away. Resist the urge to fix or silver line things. And lastly, it is critical to understand that children need to practice calming strategies outside of the difficult situations. Think of it like training for the championship games. We would not ask a child to use a new play in the middle of a game. We'd practice it over and over, so when in the stressful situation, they're ready to go. Incorporate regulating movement throughout the day, which includes regular outdoor play. Pattern rhythmic activities are regulating and calming. For example, rocking, swinging, throwing a ball back and forth, bouncing a ball, jumping on the trampoline, skipping, listening to music, singing, drumming, etc. It can also be as simple as going for a bike ride or going for a walk or having a living room dance party. Schedule some calming activities at regular intervals throughout the day, like breathing exercises, mindfulness, or yoga. Proactive regulatory activities decrease the need for reactive regulatory actions, which are also often less successful. We frequently use regulating activities in a reactive way. For example, you might give a child some space or some personal attention if you see them upset. And there's nothing wrong with that, but spacing proactive, planned 5 to 7 minute regulating activities throughout the day will help your child to remain regulated throughout the whole day. If yoga is not your thing, consider drawing, coloring, painting, puzzles, or Lego. So why is rhythm important? Well, as Bruce Perry says, the only way to move from these super high anxiety states to calmer, more cognitive states is rhythm. Pattern, repetitive, rhythmic activity, walking, running, dancing, singing, repetitive meditative breathing. You use brainstem related somatosensory networks, which make your brain accessible to relational, limbic brain, reward, and cortical thinking. This is a complicated way of saying that rhythm is important. Rhythm can be broad, like the rhythm of your day, or very specific, like the rhythm of walking or listening to your favorite song. Keep in mind that children will have lots of questions. Be patient. Be prepared for questions and for the same questions and concerns to be brought up repeatedly. This is normal and part of how the child is trying to make sense, understand what's going on. Let your child's questions guide your answers. Make sure you know what they're really asking. Don't assume. Be honest, but especially with young children, don't provide unnecessary information or too many confusing details. Give simple, brief explanations. Try to avoid general reassurance statements like, everything will be fine, there's nothing to worry about, as those can feel really invalidating. Acknowledge risk while emphasizing how precautions reduce those risks, like hand washing and not sharing food. These are challenging discussions that aren't easy for anyone, but helping your child develop an ability to be comfortable being uncomfortable will help them cope with future issues like this one. Depending on your child's age, there might be some other challenges or concern that you're facing. We're going to quickly overview some of those challenges that you may see with children 12 and under. This isn't an extensive list. If you are concerned and need to discuss your unique challenges, we invite you to visit our walk-in clinic where experienced staff can address your questions. Regressions are normal in times of stress, especially for kids that aren't speaking yet. They might be showing us that they're going through a lot. For instance, potty-trained children may start having accidents. Toddlers that have been regularly sleeping through the night may start waking up more. This is their way of telling you that life is a bit stressful right now. Most children will get back on track with the strategies presented today. The younger the children are, the more they need you to help them calm and reassure them. Not all children will experience the pandemic as stressful. For some children, this may be wonderful. They have you at home more often, and they even have increased access to you. So some of them may not experience these regressions, and that's normal as well. For older children, they may need additional reassurance. When contemplating starting kindergarten or managing other transitions, keep in mind how your child is doing. A regular dose of connection and reassurance will go a long way. Also keep in mind special markers throughout the year. One child was really looking forward to special celebrations that happened at her school at the beginning of the year. She was worried that the celebration would not happen this year. If you can anticipate some of this, try to plan a special ritual that can fill the same need. For example, a few of us are probably reimagining trick-or-treating this year and what Halloween will look like. We hope that this presentation has been helpful and that you have a few ideas that you can take away to help support your children at home. Your relationship to your child is the most powerful tool. We've all had to make adjustments in this pandemic, but some can be for the better. As Bruce Perry says, through a nurturing connection, we can offer hope and healing for our children. Some children are more complex and require a bit more support. Exceptional children require exceptional parenting, and they don't always come with a rule book. If you've tried some of these tips and you're still struggling, then please reach out to us at Crossroads. We can help you. As a wrap-up, we want to bring your attention to a relatively new service here in Ottawa. The service is called Counseling Connect, and it can be accessed at counselingconnect.org. Counseling Connect provides free access to same-day or next-day phone or video counseling sessions. This service is for children, youth, adults, and families in Ottawa and the surrounding area. Families can actually access our services through Counseling Connect. There's no waiting list and no cost. And remember, you can also access supports through our weekly walk-in clinic. So you can find additional information on our website. If you'd like to reach us, we're happy to answer questions and provide more information on services. You can also give us a call at 613-723-1623. We're happy to answer any questions and explore your need for services. In closing, as an agency, Crossroads is fundraising for the very first time to ensure that we can meet the increased demand for our services. If you're able to, consider donating. Every dollar counts and a tax receipt will be provided. Our goal is to fundraise $80,000 by the end of September, which will allow us to support 600 additional children and families to get them the help they need when they need it the most. You can go to canadahelps.org or visit our website and click on the Support Us tab at the top. All donation dollars go directly to supporting children's mental health in Ottawa. The interconnectedness of the world made us all more vulnerable to this infection, but is that same interconnectedness that will help us heal and recover. We're all in this together.